The posture of the long defeat. There is a way that long suffering changes the body before it changes anything else. Not just the physical body, though it does that too, in ways that are visible and measurable and impossible to argue with. I mean the body of the self, the posture of the interior, the angle at which a person has learned to hold themselves in relation to the world. After enough years of carrying something that was never supposed to be permanent, but has been permanent so long that the distinction between the condition and the person has become genuinely difficult to locate. You look for where the suffering ends and the self begins, and the border has dissolved. You cannot tell anymore what you would be like without it, because you have been shaped by it for so long that the shape feels original. The bent feels like the spine. Luke chapter 13. Jesus is teaching in a synagogue on the Sabbath, and there is a woman there who has had a disabling spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not fully straighten herself. That is the entirety of her medical history as Luke records it. 18 years, bent over, unable to straighten. And I want to slow down at that physical reality before we move to anything else, because I think we read past the bodily specificity of this story too quickly in our rush to get to the miracle. 18 years bent over means 18 years in which the primary visual field was the ground, not faces, not horizons, not the sky, not the stars, not the expressions of the people she was talking to. The ground, the feet of strangers passing by, the dust of roads and the stone of floors and the surface of whatever she was walking across. The world as seen from below, which is a different world than the one the upright inhabit, smaller in some ways, more textured in others, radically reduced in the dimension of perspective. A person bent over cannot see far, cannot scan the horizon, cannot look up to check the weather or watch a bird, or follow the arc of something thrown. The world contracts to the near, the low, and the immediate. And after 18 years of that contraction, the world of the near and the low and the immediate stops feeling like a limitation and starts feeling like reality. It is what is real. It is the actual world. The world of faces and horizons and upward angles becomes abstract, a theoretical space that other people inhabit, a posture that belongs to the unafflicted, a perspective so long unavailable that the imagination of it has grown faint. I want to ask you whether you know that contraction, not necessarily in the physical sense, though for some people listening to this, the physical is exactly what it is, but in the interior sense, the contraction that happens after long suffering of any kind, the narrowing of expectation, the gradual disappearance of the horizon from your field of vision, not because the horizon has ceased to exist, but because the posture your life has assumed no longer allows you to look that far. The reduction of your prayers from the spacious asking of someone who believes the sky is open to the careful, qualified, low to the ground asking of someone who has learned to want only what seems reachable from the position they are already in. The slow forgetting of what it felt like to stand straight. The moment when bent stops feeling like a temporary condition and starts feeling like a permanent identity. The woman in Luke 13 had been bent for 18 years, and she was in the synagogue. That detail matters. She was still showing up, still doing the thing that the community of faith required, still present in the place of prayer and teaching, still arranging her diminished life around the rhythms of the community, still coming on the Sabbath to be in the place where God was known to be near. Not because anything had changed. Nothing had changed in 18 years. But she was there, which means that the 18 years had not taken her faith, even if they had changed its posture. She was still in the room, still in the building, still present in the space where an encounter was possible, even if the possibility of the encounter had, by this point, perhaps stopped feeling real to her in the way it once had. She was not seeking Jesus. There is no record that she had heard about him, or that she had come to the synagogue that day with any expectation beyond the Sabbath routine she had been maintaining for nearly 2 decades. She was not pressing through a crowd. She was not crying out. She was not climbing trees or tearing open rooftops or sending word ahead. She was doing what she always did on the Sabbath. She was there. And Jesus saw her. He called her over, and he said, "Woman, you are freed from your disability." And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight. And she glorified God. I want to sit with the physical experience of that moment for as long as this reflection allows. Because I think we lose something essential if we move from the miracle to the theological controversy that follows, without pausing in the body of this woman. At the moment, her spine became what it was always designed to be. Think about what she saw. For the first time in 18 years, faces at eye level. The faces of the people in the synagogue around her, no longer a collection of ankles and sandals and the lower hems of robes, but actual human faces with expressions and eyes, and the full communicative range of the human countenance. Light, the full height of the room, the windows at the top of the walls, the sky visible through them. Space, the vertical dimension of the world opened back up like a room that had been sealed for a generation and was suddenly, all at once, accessible again. And she glorified God in the immediate moment, before the controversy started, before the synagogue ruler opened his mouth, before anyone had a chance to frame the moment in theological or political terms. In the raw, first breath of standing straight after 18 years of the ground, she glorified God. Which tells me that the 18 years had not emptied her of the impulse toward worship. They had bent the body, but not the spirit. The posture of the interior, whatever the posture of the spine, had retained its orientation. She came into the fullness of her healing already knowing who to thank, which means she had been carrying his name through 18 years of looking at the ground, waiting, without knowing she was waiting, for the moment when the name she was carrying would become the thing she was living. And then the ruler of the synagogue spoke. And what he said is so precisely calibrated to miss the point that it almost requires the genius of deliberate effort. He was indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, and he said to the crowd, "There are 6 days in which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day. Come on those days and be healed." As though the woman had walked in that morning, having casually decided that today was a good day for her healing, and she could just as easily have scheduled it for a Tuesday. As though 18 years of disability was an appointment that could have been managed more conveniently if she had consulted the religious calendar first. As though the sovereignty of God over the hour and the form and the timing of restoration was a scheduling matter, subject to the synagogue's administrative preferences. Jesus did not contain his response. He called them hypocrites. And he made an argument from the lesser to the greater that I think is one of the most devastating pieces of pastoral logic in the entire gospel record. He said, "Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to water it? Then ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham whom Satan bound for 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day?" Daughter of Abraham. There it is again, that word of belonging, spoken into a moment of controversy and challenge, placing the woman inside the family that the religious establishment had, through its indignation, implicitly positioned her outside of. The ruler's complaint had treated her condition as an administrative inconvenience. Jesus' response treated her as a person with a name and a lineage, and 18 years of specific, named, personally significant suffering. She was not a case study in the Sabbath controversy. She was a daughter of Abraham who had been bound. The word he used was the same word used for binding animals, for tethering, for the restriction of something that was designed for movement and had been prevented from moving, who had been bound for 18 years and who ought, by any logic that claimed to honor God, to be loosed. Ought to be loosed. The liberation was not an act of mercy that bent the rules. It was an act of justice that fulfilled them. Because the rules were always meant to protect the human beings they governed, not to govern the protection of human beings. And a Sabbath that could observe its regulations and leave a daughter of Abraham in her 18th year of bondage was not honoring the God of the Sabbath. It was hiding behind him. Now I want to stay with the word bound for a moment, because Jesus used it deliberately, and it opens something important. He said Satan had bound her, which is not primarily a demonological claim about the mechanism of her disability. It is a claim about the nature of the bondage. Binding is what you do when you want to prevent something from going where it was designed to go. You bind the ox to keep it from wandering. You bind the prisoner to keep them from fleeing. The binding is the imposition of a constraint on something that has a nature that moves, that reaches, that goes. And what Jesus was naming was not just the physical symptom, but the spiritual signature of the whole 18 years. The quality of the suffering that is not merely painful but restrictive, that does not just hurt but prevents, that keeps you from the posture and the perspective and the range of motion that you were made for. Most of the suffering that has bent people's lives out of shape has that quality of binding to it. Not just pain, prevention. The thing that keeps you from reaching, from seeing, from standing in the full height of what you were designed to be. The binding that has, after enough years, started to feel not like a restraint from outside, but like a characteristic from inside. The 18 years that have stopped feeling like something done to you and started feeling like something that is ho. But Jesus called it a bond, which means it has a nature that is external to the self even when it feels internal. It came from somewhere. It was imposed. It was not original. It is not the spine. It is what has bent the spine as the sung. And the spine, beneath the 18 years of enforced curvature, still remembers what it was made to do, still has the structure, the vertebrae, the design for uprightness built into it at the level of its original creation. The bound thing still has the nature of the unbound thing inside it, waiting for the word that will release it into the posture it was always designed to inhabit. Be loosed. That is the word. Not be improved, not be managed better, not develop coping strategies for the ongoing reality of your limitation. Be loosed, released, freed from the bond that was never supposed to be permanent, that was never the original design, that has been the defining condition for so long that you have forgotten it is not your nature. And I want to bring this to the interior geography of your actual life right now, because I know that what has bent you may not be visible to anyone looking at you from across the synagogue. The 18 years that have changed your posture may be entirely invisible from the outside, invisible to the people who know you, invisible to the congregation that sees you every Sabbath, invisible even, sometimes, to yourself, because you have been bent for so long that you have lost the reference point for what straight feels like. The contraction has become familiar. The reduced visual field has become normal. The prayer that only asks for what seems reachable from the position you are already in has become the only kind of prayer you know how to pray. What has bound you? I am not asking you to produce a clinical diagnosis. I am asking you to sit with the honest question of what it is in your life that has the specific quality of the 18 years. Not just painful but restrictive, not just hard but preventing, not just a challenge to navigate but a force that has bent the spine of your hope and your expectation and your sense of what is possible until you can no longer fully see the horizon you were originally designed to face. Name it, even if only in the interior, even if only in the private space of this moment. Name the bond, because Jesus named it. He did not deal with the woman's condition in euphemism or abstraction. He named the binding, and he named the binder, and he named the duration, 18 years, with a specificity that honored the reality of what she had carried. He did not minimize it or reframe it as a hidden blessing, or suggest that the 18 years were primarily a character-building exercise she should be grateful for. He called it a bond. He said she ought to be loosed from it, and he loosed her. The naming is not the whole healing, but it is the beginning of the dignity that the healing restores, because to be healed without being seen, to have the symptom removed without the person being acknowledged, is a lesser thing than what Jesus did in that synagogue. He saw her, he called her over, he named the bond, he healed the body, he called her daughter, and then he defended her against the people who tried to make her healing a problem. The whole sequence was an act not just of power, but of profound, full-spectrum human dignity. And I want to say something about the synagogue ruler that I think is important before we close. His anger was not simply about the Sabbath, or rather, the Sabbath argument was the vehicle for a deeper discomfort, which was this: the woman's healing disrupted the order of the service. It was unscheduled. It happened in the middle of something else. It did not come through the proper channels or follow the expected sequence of religious activity. And disruptions to the order of religious service are uncomfortable for the people who manage the order, because the order is how they know where they are, how they maintain the sense that the holy is being handled correctly, how they protect themselves from the unsettling possibility that God might act outside the parameters they have been trained to manage. The woman's healing was an interruption, and the institutional response to interruption is almost always the same. This should have happened differently, at a more appropriate time, through more appropriate means. Which is a way of saying, your healing is making things complicated for us. We would prefer that God work in ways that do not require us to revise our expectations. Be wary of any framework, religious or otherwise, that is more comfortable with your bondage than with the disruption of your liberation. Be wary of the voice that says your healing is poorly timed. Be wary of the system that can manage your 18 years with liturgical efficiency, but cannot accommodate the moment when the 18 years end without a scheduling conflict. The ruler was indignant because something happened that he had not expected and could not control. And Jesus said, "This is exactly what the Sabbath is for. This is precisely the kind of moment the holy day was designed to hold. Not the management of religion, the liberation of the bound." Stand up straight, even if the standing feels foreign, even if the upright posture is so unfamiliar after so many years of the bent that it feels less natural than the curve, even if people around you are more comfortable with the version of you that stayed low. The unfamiliarity of the standing is not a sign that you have gone somewhere you do not belong. It is the sign that you have arrived somewhere you were always designed to be, in the full height of the person you were made to be, with the full visual field of the life you were made for, with the horizon restored and the faces of the people around you at eye level, and the sky visible above you for the first time in whatever your own version of 18 years has been. She straightened, and she glorified God. In that order, the body first, and then the praise, because the praise came out of the body, out of the physical experience of the spine remembering what it was for, out of the first breath of the upright woman who had been the bent woman a moment ago, and who now had enough vertical space in her lungs to let the worship out in a way that the bent posture had been compressing for nearly 2 decades. Your praise is waiting in your posture, the fullness of it, the unrestricted, uncompressed, full-lung version of it, is waiting for the moment when the bond releases and the body remembers, and the spine becomes what it always was beneath the 18 years. Be loosed, stand straight, and let everything that has been waiting in the compressed interior of the bound years out into the air of the liberated life. Thank you for seeing her from across the room, for the eyes that found the bent woman in a crowd of the upright, and recognized not a scheduling problem but a daughter, a person with a name and a lineage and a bond that had a specific duration and a specific injustice to it, and for calling her over rather than going to the rulers first, for making her the center of the moment rather than the occasion for a debate, for laying hands on the bent body before the controversy started, for naming the bond before you broke it, for defending her after you healed her, and for the word daughter spoken in a room full of indignation, the word that placed her inside the family her condition had made her feel she had drifted to the edges of, and for the Sabbath that turned out to be exactly the right day for this, the most right day, the day made for the loosing of the bound and the straightening of the bent and the return of the horizon to the eyes of the one who had been looking at the ground for 18 years, and who finally, in the middle of an ordinary service on an ordinary Sabbath morning, stood up and saw faces,